there, my name is Jasmine Sky, and I'm here today because it's almost NaNoWriMo, at least if you're watching this right around when I posted it. So right now, for me at least, it is late October, and that means it is time to be gearing up for Nano. This is the first of what I'm calling my NaNoWriMo writing advice series. The thumbnails for all the videos in this series, at least for this year, were inspired by the amazing NaNoWriMo song, which was created by Christina Horner. So I'm gonna link that in the description below because it's great and I always listen to it to get myself excited about NaNoWriMo, and I thought it would be a fun way to introduce all of the videos in this NaNoWriMo writing advice series this year. I think there's going to be 5 videos in this series, but we'll see. Today's video is coming to you right before NaNoWriMo actually starts because this is all about finding time to write. NaNoWriMo is a pretty intense event that requires you, if you want to win the traditional way, to write 50,000 words in a month, which is a lot. However, it's very doable even if you are a slow writer or a very busy person. I hope that you will be able to take the advice and what I talk about in this video to find a way to create a schedule for you that works to allow you to be able to participate in Nano, because I think it's a fun time, and for me it's always been a very productive time, and it's really great to get 50,000 words written so that I can have that early messy draft to then mold into something better later. So let's talk about finding time to write. Now, one of the positives about the current COVID-19 situation is that a lot of us are working from home or have a lot of previous social events we would have been doing in November have been canceled and things like that. And because of that, a lot of us might have more time than we otherwise would have had in a year without COVID-19, which means this might be the perfect year for you to do NaNoWriMo. Now, of course, there is an aspect of emotional weight that is a global pandemic and everything else going on in the world right now that might make it harder to write. So you really need to know yourself as a person and what you're in the right mindset to do. For me, I know that when I can't deal with the world, writing is my escape. And so therefore, in these kinds of situations, I do tend to be pretty productive because that's how I'm channeling all of my emotional energy. So it's up to you, and I can't tell you whether or not you would be able to. In my opinion, you're not going to hurt anything by trying. Even if you get 10,000 words into the month and you realize it's not working, that's 10,000 more words than you had previously. When we're talking about finding time to write, there's a lot of different advice you can get about cutting out a hobby that otherwise would take up time. I think the issue with that advice is that often when people say cut out a hobby and replace it with writing, what they're saying is cut out TV watching or YouTube surfing or whatever and replace that with writing. But I think that for most people, those kinds of activities we do at times when we are mentally fatigued and therefore not necessarily in the right mindset to write anything. I think instead the better advice is to figure out the time of day where you yourself are most productive and find a way to rearrange your schedule such that you can use some of that time in order to get your writing done. So I'm going to go through the different times of day and how different people find them more or less productive, and maybe that'll help you reflect on yourself and figure out when is the best time for you to write. So the first one, of course, is early morning or morning in general. Now, this is one of the best times to write if you are a morning person or someone who doesn't mind the mornings. You don't have to love mornings, but if you don't mind mornings and you're okay with waking up a little earlier, early morning might be the best way for you to rearrange your schedule so that you can be productive in your writing. Early morning is really useful, especially for people with children or other commitments that take up your time and energy during the day, or for people especially who feel very exhausted by the time they get home from work and don't feel like they have the energy to do any writing when they get home from work, which is totally valid, by the way. You don't have to feel like you're a failure if you don't want to write when you get home from work. You've done a full day of your job. You can instead wake up an hour earlier each day and write before anyone else in your family or household are up and get your word count in before you do the rest of your day. This works for a lot of people, and it's one that I would recommend experimenting with. If you are someone who is biologically a morning person, your brain is at its most productive in the first 2 hours after you have woken up, which means it is perfect time for you to get your writing done and get it done quicker than when you're exhausted. Now, the second part of this is just the morning. And this is for people who may not be true morning people biologically. Like myself, I don't want to be super productive in the hour after I've woken up. I still need that time to sort of wake up and get myself together. But I love writing like 2 to 3 hours after I've woken up. That is my ideal productive time because I have fully engaged myself with the world, but I still have tons of energy. And as someone who doesn't have commitments like a family that are going to keep me distracted in that morning time frame, it's very useful for me to get my writing done then in that like before lunch period. That might be really good for you. Of course, that is a time when a lot of people have school or work, so it might be difficult for you to do that. One of the ways you can maybe get around that gets us into the third time period of the day, which is your lunchtime. If you're someone who is okay with eating earlier, I know some people like late lunches. I personally love early lunches, partially because that like 11 a.m. time frame is also when I'm at my most productive and high energy. So for me, I love writing in my lunch period and starting my lunch period at like 11 a.m. Writing during your lunch can be a great compromise for people who aren't morning people, but who don't wanna write after work, because you still have a lot of energy. You've only gone through about half of the day and you can recharge by eating. It's also a great time to be doing sprints. Writing sprints are really nice if you're the type of person who finds that you are very productive in small bursts. Then learning how to use writing sprints effectively is very, very useful. You might not be that type of writer. You might be the type of writer who finds you are at your most productive after you have been sitting with your book for an extended period of time. Maybe you sit down for like an hour and you're just slowly getting into your book, and then at the 1 hour mark to 2 hours is when you are most productive because you're fully into your book at that point. And if you know you're that type of writer, then you want to make sure to choose a time of day where you have a solid 2 hour chunk to write. As someone who does love sprinting, again, lunch period is great for me. I do an earlier lunch period, you could do a later lunch period, but I will usually use my lunch period. I will simultaneously eat and write. So I will eat as I'm trying to think about what I'm gonna do for the scene, and then I will sprint and I will write for like 20 minutes, and then I will take another break, I will eat, I will pre-plan out the rest of the scene, I will sprint, and that usually takes me through my like hour lunch period that I give myself, depending on what I'm doing that day, et cetera, et cetera. So that might be a good option for you if you're a similar type of person. For the fourth category, which is the afternoon, there is a sect of people who biologically get what's called the afternoon peak. This is not me. I am the kind of person that gets an afternoon drop, and I typically want to take naps in the afternoon. I find my energy goes way down after lunch before dinner. That is my like least productive time of day. And that's true for some people as well. But there are people, and maybe it's you, who get a peak after lunch, who get a lot of energy in the afternoon time period. And if that's the case for you, then maybe you need to find a way to rearrange your schedule such that you can get half an hour, 2 hours in that time frame to get your writing done then. Maybe that means taking a late lunch. Maybe that means rearranging your work schedule or your school schedule. I don't know what it looks like, and it might not be possible, but if it is possible for you and your schedule, it's a good time to do it. The next time of day is the evening. This is the time right after dinner where for some people, dinner is another recharging event where your brain gets some sustenance and then you're able to think and be more productive again for a little while before the sleepiness hits in. If you're someone who finds that that's the case and you don't have any time during the day, nor are you a morning person who wants to wake up early, this might be a great time for you to write. This is just a difficult time for people who have family obligations, because this is typically a time where a lot of stuff is going on in terms of getting the children fed and ready for bed, etc., etc. But if you don't have those obligations, or if you can convince a partner to take care of those obligations X number of days a week so that you can get writing done, whatever that might look like, then maybe if you're someone who finds that you are more energized after dinner, this is a great time to write. Sorry if my angle just totally changed. Someone just called me on my phone, which is what I'm filming on, so I had to redo that. So we'll just move on. The final section of the day to talk about is nighttime, which of course means it's perfect for the night owls, those who find that they are at their most productive in the middle of the night. This, like early morning, can be a really good time for those with families, because hopefully everyone else has gone to sleep, so you have no distractions, and therefore you can get your stuff done and be productive. This is also a great time for those who find that they work best when coming up on a deadline. One of the tricks about NaNoWriMo that allows more people to be productive during it versus in other times of year is that it does a thing where it does the full month deadline of 50,000 words, but it also does daily deadlines of 1,667 words. So if you are able to fall into the mindset of every single day, my deadline by the end of the day, that's my deadline, I have to get 1,667 words, then if you're someone who is at their most productive when you're coming up to a deadline, writing at night, therefore the last opportunity of a day to get your word count in for that day, can be a really productive time. I have no idea if that was at all coherent. It made sense to me. I am personally not a night owl, and I do tend to go to bed pretty early, but during Nano, if I have failed to get my writing done earlier in the day, in those other times of day that I personally like to write, then nighttime is my last opportunity to get my word count in the deadline. And as someone who is very productive right up to a deadline, like I do my most work when I see that deadline looming, then that's often some of my best writing time. Like I definitely can write the fastest at night. Is it the best writing? Not so sure, but the fastest for sure. And I have a lot of friends who do their NaNoWriMo almost exclusively in the middle of the night, because that's just when they're at their most productive and creative. And that's totally fine. The whole point of this video was to help you reflect on yourself and when you think you're at your most productive during the day. It is different for different people. If you don't quite know, you can assess yourself over the next couple days leading up to Nano and try to figure out when are the times of day where you're lagging, when are the times of day where you have a lot of energy. Maybe there's a particular activity that inspires you or gets your brain going. For a lot of people, taking a shower can be a great way to unlock some creative energy. Taking a walk, doing any sort of exercise, those are often used tricks for creativity and productivity generation, but you might have a totally different thing that works for you. And I do recommend figuring out at least 2 times of day that are best for you. As I've said, I prefer doing like an early lunch morning time period, and the nighttime period are my most productive times a day. So when I do Nano, typically I will try for that time period in the morning/lunch area, and if I fail that, then I know I'm not going to be productive in the afternoon or the evening, and then I start and I get my word count in the nighttime right before I go to bed. So you need to figure out your ideal schedule, and then you'll know, and then you'll have a way forward for the rest of Nano that can lead to you being most productive. All the luck with that. Please go ahead and let me know in the comments below what your ideal writing schedule is and what's worked for you in the past, or what you think you're gonna be doing for NaNoWriMo this year. I would love to know. I think that's really interesting, and maybe we'll do a check-in later, and you can let me know how it's been going and if it's been productive. As always, check out the description of this video for links to causes that need your support. I would really appreciate you giving it to them. You can also support my channel by subscribing and liking this video, etc. And I look forward to chatting with y'all in the comments.